The clock towers of Paris had just chimed midnight on the night of Monday, August the 21st, when the frantic knocking and terrified screams of a young woman disturbed the sedate quiet of the high, narrow old house at No. 9, Rue de Madagascar. "Monsieur Mailleul, wake up! Come quick!" By the time Monsieur Mailleul and his wife, still half asleep, had put on their robes and unbolted the apartment door, other voices and footsteps were resounding throughout the house. The concierge had been aroused from his sleep, demanding in an angry voice what the disturbance was all about. There stood a tall, dark-haired girl, wearing a low-cut spangled evening gown under a man's cloth topcoat. As soon as Monsieur Mailleul had opened the door, she fell into his arms. "Oh, it's terrible," she sobbed. "I can't go back there." "What is it? What's the matter, Mademoiselle Noisier?" inquired the startled Mailleul. The trembling girl in their doorway was no stranger to them. She was Violet Noisier, beautiful 18-year-old daughter of the couple that lived across the hall. Although Monsieur Mailleul, a reserved man, had never said more than a hello to her as they passed each other on the stairs, he knew that her father and mother were working class, he an engine driver and Madame a housewife, who lived in a claustrophobic 2-room apartment. "What's the matter? Pull yourself together," Mailleul urged the girl, as he strove to disengage himself from her sobbing embrace. The concierge had reached the landing by this time, and was hovering in the background, adding to the confusion. "It's Mama and Papa," Violet finally managed to gasp. "They are dead. The place is full of gas." The concierge became startled. He could detect the sickly sweet odour of gas in the narrow stairwell. The door of the Noisier apartment was firmly closed. Cautioning the alarmed neighbours to wait and not enter the apartment until he opened it, the concierge hurried downstairs again to turn off the gas valve in the basement. While they waited, young Violet explained, through tears, what confronted her upon returning home. "I just came home. I had been staying with friends, and as soon as I opened the door I smelled the gas. I called and there was no answer. I ran through the apartment and found Papa's body on the bedroom floor, and Mama stretched out in the bed. I shook them, but they're dead." The concierge returned and opened the Noisier's door. Gas rushed out when he did so. Handkerchief to his nose, he hurried in and threw open the windows. It was as Violet had said. Monsieur Jean-Baptiste Noisier lay on the floor in his nightshirt beside the bed, his legs twisted and one hand clutching the bed leg as though he had been attempting to get up. His thin, frail wife lay full length on the bed in her nightgown, hands serenely folded as though she had been peacefully awaiting her own death. The police were duly summoned and a doctor examined the bodies. Violet, meanwhile, detailed the events to a uniformed gendarme. She confessed she had not been staying at home much of late, and knew why her parents would commit suicide. Money worries, perhaps? Violet allowed herself to be led away by the sympathetic neighbours. The doctor completed his examination of Monsieur Nozière's body, and it was covered and taken away on a stretcher to the Paris morgue. That same doctor was just about to draw a sheet over the ashen face of Madame Nozière when he suddenly inhaled sharply and bent closer to her face. He requested a mirror from the curious tenants. The mirror, held under Madame Nozière's nostrils, faintly caused condensation on the mirror surface. "This woman is still alive. Get her to the hospital quick," the doctor exclaimed. At the nearby hospital Saint-Antoine, it was touch and go. Madame Nozière was literally on the threshold of death when she was wheeled in, and doctors worked tirelessly to save her, battling for her life throughout the early morning hours. Meanwhile, Assistant Police Chief Gaston Moser of the Seine Prefecture drove to the flat in the Rue de Madagascar to make his routine investigation and formal report. The case at first glance seemed a clear-cut one. The middle-aged couple, alone in their apartment, for reasons known only to them, had chosen to end their lives. Monsieur Nozière, at the last minute, had apparently changed his mind, but was too weak to do anything about it. None of the neighbours could offer any motive for suicide, other than that the Nozières had been upset over the antics of their wayward daughter, who had left home a month or so previously to live her own life, as she defiantly put it. But Violet herself was nowhere to be found when Chief Moser inquired after her. The other tenants had last seen her sobbing as she was running down the stairs, just as it was discovered that her mother was still alive. The gendarme, assuming that she would remain nearby, had neglected to obtain her present address. "Well, she'll probably turn up in the morning," Chief Moser shrugged. "She was obviously so upset she simply forgot to say where she was going. It's a shame, though, that we can't reach her to tell her about her mother's condition." Violet had mentioned that her parents were worried over money, but no other relatives or friends knew anything about this claim. Monsieur Nozière had made a comfortable salary as a locomotive engineer on the Paris-Lyon-Marseille line, and the couple lived modestly, but far from being poverty-stricken. A routine search of the apartment failed to locate any money, but there were several bank books in a dresser drawer, and there was no sign of anything out of the ordinary. One thing puzzled the chief. The supper dishes and remains of food were still on the kitchen table, also empty wine glasses for 3 persons. It was possible that the Nozières had entered into their suicide pact immediately after a last supper, and no longer had a reason to clear the table. But who was the third guest? Chief Moser questioned the concierge on whether anyone had entered or departed the couple's apartment on that evening. His reply was a firm no. He had been sitting out in the lobby until about 10 p.m. and was certain that neither Violet nor anyone else, except tenants whom he knew, had gone in or out since before dinner time. and the Mayeuls, who had retired to bed about an hour before Violet came pounding on their door, insisted that they had not heard the slightest sound all evening from the adjoining apartment, much less the sounds of a convivial dinner. In fact, no one even recalled seeing the Nozières all that day. Chief Moser reasoned that Madame Nozière would be able to explain the circumstances, if she survived. However, in the morning, a report came to Chief Moser's desk that shed a completely different light on the case. The doctors at Saint-Antoine reported that Madame Nozière, still in a critical condition, was suffering not from the effects of gas inhalation, but from a lethal dose of Veronal, another name for the sleeping drug Barbital. The amount of gas she had inhaled was minimal, and she had already been drugged when she inhaled it. Obviously, she could not have turned the gas on herself. An immediate autopsy was ordered on the body of Monsieur Nozière. This was to be performed by Dr. Paul of the Institute of Forensic Medicine. The results were conclusive. The engineer had died from Veronal poisoning. What had seemed a simple suicide pact was changed to murder and attempted murder. Inspector Marcel Guillaume now took personal charge of the investigation of the crime. Guillaume ordered officers to look for young Violet. In her absence, a crew of technicians sifted through the apartment inch by inch. In 2 of the wine glasses they found traces of Veronal. Fingerprints on the 3rd glass were too smudged for identification. In the kitchen wastebasket was a note signed by a Dr. Doron, addressed to the elder Nozières, instructing them to take the powders which he had enclosed. In a dresser drawer the detectives found passionate love letters addressed to Violet, from a one Louis Pierre. The latest ones whispered promises of marriage. A return address in the Quartier Latin was given. The last couple of letters were written from a summer resort at Sablé-d'Olonne, where Louis was apparently visiting his parents. Interviewed by Guillaume, Dr. Doron, a highly respectable practitioner, said the note, albeit on his stationery, was a forgery. Furthermore, Monsieur and Madame Nozière were not patients of his, but he had been treating young Violet for anemia. While provincial police were asked to contact Louis Pierre, Guillaume went to the address in the Quartier Latin, which was a small studio apartment. There was no one home, but the inspector quickly learned from the concierge that the tenant was Pierre, a young law student and the son of well-to-do parents. He was also an amateur artist and was known to lead a wild life. Lately, they said, his girlfriend Violet had been staying with him. Inspector Guillaume's men located a friend of Violet's named Madeleine Debise. She said she didn't know where her friend was at the moment, but quickly declared that Violet had not been at her parents' at the time of the fatal dinner.
Violet and I were at a party with some student friends last night. That would be Monday night. We had dinner about 5 p.m. in a little restaurant. Then we all went dancing at the Bal Tabarin. We left there about 11 p.m., and Violet said she thought she would go and sleep at her parents' place for the night. I don't know what you're after her for, but I can swear she never left my sight the whole night. I had a special reason to stick close to her, because I was broke and Violet happened to have a roll of money. In fact, she loaned me 100 francs when she left me on the Boulevard Saint-Germain. That was about 11:30.
But Inspector Guillaume and his colleagues were starting to build up a picture of young Violet. Friends and neighbors had plenty to say about her activities. Her parents just couldn't seem to control her, one woman said. She was always in trouble at school, and since the age of 12 or 13, she's been running around with men, one man after another. She simply became attractive to men too soon, and it turned her head. Violet had left home several times, but always came back. She was constantly quarreling with her long-suffering parents, asserting her right to live her own life, but constantly coming back to them for financial help. More information came trickling in. In one of her school reports, a teacher described her as follows: lazy, sneaky, hypocritical and wanton. A deplorable example for her comrades. To go out to cafes, to brasserie, she needed money. She found the easiest way to acquire it was to steal from her parents' pockets, or sell her body to the men in the neighborhood. She also posed naked for a magazine for money. A journalist from Paris Soir also reported that Violet indulged in the vilest debauchery at an age when most girls were still playing with a doll. Monsieur Mailleul provided more sinister information. Only 2 months before, the Nozières had been almost overcome by a leaking gas jet. Another time, their bedroom window curtains had mysteriously caught fire, and 3 or 4 times the engineer and his wife were seized with terrible pains after eating, and called Mailleul to send for the doctor. On these occasions, Violet also complained of pains. An investigation of Monsieur Nozière's affairs revealed that he had about 180,000 francs in the bank, which would go to Violet in the event of the death of both parents. Meanwhile, Louis Pierre had returned to Paris and presented himself for questioning. He and Violet had been friends for about a year. When Violet's parents happened to find his letters to her and forbade her seeing him, he promised marriage, and Violet left home and moved into his studio. "I haven't seen her since last week, and I don't know where she is," he said, "but she mentioned a funny thing in a letter just the other day. She said she had inherited money and was going to buy a car and come to get me." While the hunt was on to locate Violet, news came from the hospital that Madame Nozière had awoken from her coma and was recovering steadily. The first word she uttered when she learned her husband was dead was to accuse Violet of poisoning them. The girl had administered the Veronal, she said, under the guise of powders prescribed by Dr. Doran for headaches. Her statements revealed that the poisoning had taken place after dinner on Sunday afternoon, when Violet had dined with them, and not Monday night as had been assumed. The couple had lain for some 30 hours before Violet had summoned assistance from the neighbours. After establishing her alibi for Monday night, she had snuck back at midnight and turned on the gas, to make it look as though it had just happened. The hunt was on for the fugitive daughter, blazoned by newspapers and radio. The public followed the case avidly. Public meetings demanded the guillotine for the cold-blooded killer. Madame Nozière was able to provide further details. Violet had persuaded them to take the powders in their wine glasses right after dinner. Feeling ill after only a few minutes, they had gone to bed on her advice, and she promised to call the doctor. While they lay semi-conscious, Violet came back and said the doctor had told her to give them baking soda, which had contained even more veronal. Madame Nozière also established that 3,000 francs waiting to be banked was missing from the dressing table, and 1,000 francs from the hem of her dress. It was now clear where Violet had obtained the money for her lavish night out. Violet no longer had an alibi. She hadn't expected that one of her parents would survive, and naively expected a suicide verdict to close the matter once and for all. Now all of Paris was searching for her. On August the 29th, more than a week after the murder, Count Henry Dubé, a young engineer, reported to the police that he had arranged a date for that night with a girl dressed all in black, who called herself Christiane Darfus, who he was certain from her appearance was the fugitive Violet. When Mademoiselle Darfus showed up at the subway station that night for their date, instead of her expected dinner companion, she was met by a squad of detectives. Under questioning, she sullenly admitted the poisoning of her parents. She said she had meant to kill only her father and had given her mother a milder dose. She shocked the detectives with a startling motive for the patricide. She said that her father had sexually assaulted her on a trip to the country, and that she was pregnant by him. He had threatened to kill her if she told anyone. She also claimed that her father had been raping her for the past 6 years. But the examining doctors reported that Violet was not pregnant, and further investigation by Guillaume proved that the incident could not have happened at the time and place she claimed. Violet's mother filed a civil suit against Violet for slandering the dead. Violet denied that she had taken her parents' money. She said that an elderly professor of the Sorbonne had given her 3,000 francs, but this too proved to be untrue. Public feeling was so strong that a mob tried to storm the Petite Roquette prison, and Violet had to be removed under heavy guard. French justice is slow and thorough, and more than a year passed before Violet was brought to trial for murder before Judge Père at the Seine Assizes. Her various confessions were introduced, and a parade of witnesses condemned her. The defense attorney argued that her strong passions had driven her to poison her parents who stood in her way. Violet maintained her version of events and clarified that her motivation was not to receive the inheritance. In fact, a friend provided her with regular financial assistance. Her benefactor is around 60 years old, an industrialist, married, and father of a family. Of his identity, Violet only knows his first name, Monsieur Émile. The only other information she has to help find the witness is the description of his automobile, a Talbot, and blue in color. The investigators' searches to locate this mysterious benefactor were unsuccessful. A most painful confrontation occurs during the trial. Despite her request for forgiveness, Violet Nozière, suffering from anxiety attacks, is rejected by her mother, who denounces her with these words, "Violet, Violet, kill yourself! You killed your father, such a good husband! Kill yourself!" Despite her daughter crying for forgiveness, Madame Nozière shouts to her daughter, "Never! Never!" stretching out her fist towards her and making efforts to escape the embrace of those who held her down in her chair. "Never! I will only forgive you after the judgment, when you are dead." At the last minute, Madame Nozière took the stand to plead mercy for her daughter, but it took the jury only a few minutes, and on October the 13th, 1934, she was found guilty and sentenced to die by the guillotine. Turning towards the court, which is moving away, with a distraught face, the condemned woman cries desperately, "I told the truth. It is shameful. You weren't merciful." Despite the atrocity of her crime and public feeling, President Lebrun on Christmas Day commuted the sentence of Violet Nozière to life imprisonment with hard labor. The prison in Haguenau is very harsh. Isolation is the rule, with inmates forbidden to talk to each other, help each other, or share packages. Violet Nozière, faced with the grueling conditions of detention and in her poor state of health, turned to the Catholic religion. The Sisters of Bethany, present at the prison, support her earnest desire to be saved. The transformation of Violet Nozière and her impeccable attitude are cited as an example to other prisoners. She becomes a model prisoner and begins her rehabilitation. In October 1937, Violet Nozière retracts the accusations made against her father. This retraction in a letter from Violet addressed to her mother is reproduced throughout the press. This allows Violet's mother to be financially relieved of the costs of the trial. the reconciliation between mother and daughter is finally sealed. Violet's grandfather, Felix Nozier, died at the age of 82 without ever having forgiven his granddaughter. Then, in 1942, her sentence was further reduced to 12 years. She was released in 1945 and moved to Paris. There she lived under an assumed name, that of her mother, Germaine Hazard. Violet gets a job as an accounting secretary at the Christian Federation of Students. She falls in love with a certain Pierre Garnier, the son of the remand prison clerk. The marriage between Pierre and Violet took place in Neuville-sur-Loire on December 16, 1946. Violet regains a taste for life and has 5 children, a girl and 4 boys, to whom she will never speak about her past. Talking about her release and rehabilitation from prison, Violet had this to say: "I wanted this rehabilitation for my children. For me, it didn't matter. My life is over. I'm happy that my mother, to whom I told everything, finally understood the truth. She knows that I was innocent, despite what I had done, and forgave me." In her final years, Violet contracted bone cancer. She knew death was imminent. "Until the end, she showed overwhelming courage," said a nun who had cared for her for a long time, and who assisted her until her death. "For months she had known it was hopeless, but hid it from her family, trying to look cheerful and friendly, making plans for the future. Although she was in excruciating pain, she refused the sedatives that we offered her. She did this in order to maintain her lucidity and to be able to run her house and take care of her children." Violet died on November 26, 1966, aged 51, at 2:30 in the morning, at her home in Petite Queville, at peace with herself and her family. Dixit Dominus Domino meo, sede ad extris meis, scabellum pedum tuorum, gloria Patri et Filia et Spiritui Sancto. Well, my dear friends, I do hope you enjoyed that presentation. I don't know about you, but I have mixed feelings about this case, mixed feelings about Violet. If the abuse that she confessed and described to the arresting police officers actually happened, she didn't do herself any favors by all the lies that she invented to go along with those allegations. Also the theft of the money, I'm pretty sure the mother wouldn't have lied about that. Yeah, I mean, to claim that she was pregnant by her father and then it turned out she wasn't pregnant, I don't know, was she a compulsive liar or a fantasist? The actual investigator in charge of her case, he was convinced of her claims. He believed her, but nobody else did. And I think it would be hard to believe her with all the lies that followed, but perhaps it did happen. Perhaps it did happen, and this compulsive liar complex was something else that she had developed. If it is true what she claims at the end, that her mother forgave her and understood that she was telling the truth, then that would suggest, well, it would suggest that the mother believed her claims. at the end. I just don't understand why she would poison the mother. Couldn't she have waited for an opportunity for the mother to be absent and poison the father by himself? And then the case would have been closed. They would have thought he had died of gas poisoning. But the fact that she poisoned both of them and turned the gas on, I'm pretty sure that she knew that they would not survive. And she took the money as well. And the shock when she found out that her mother was alive, then she did the runner. So that suggests to me that very guilty of the murder and attempted murder charge. She must have known by giving her mother the Veronal, despite her claims that it was a milder dose, to give her the Veronal and then turn the gas valve on. That's there's going to be death resulting, and it's a miracle that the mother actually survived. Her rehabilitation, her complete turnaround was quite interesting. From that wild life that she had led, people can change. They do. I totally believe that. And she obviously became a very good mother. Didn't have the best of fortunes in life, did she? To die so young of very painful cancer. Yeah. But she seems to have found peace at the end. We will never know the real truth behind the case. We just have to sort of read between the lines. I think she would have been believed if she had just killed the father and not told all those other outrageous lies. But that was probably why people condemned her, and because of her previous lifestyle. Yeah, this photo of the supposed crime scene, I've put alleged crime scene because I don't really believe it is. If you do a search on Google Images, it always comes up as the Violet Noziere case, but why would the pillow be soaked in blood? I'm a bit dubious of the claim that photo is actually belonging to this case, but I used it because that is the one that is touted as a crime scene photo from this case, but I don't personally believe it is. Yeah, I tend to think that Violet lived in a fantasy world and obviously wanted to move in higher circles and live that eternal party life. Apparently she wanted to even buy a Bugatti for the boyfriend to come and pick him up in a Bugatti, which is of course one of the most expensive cars at the time. I just don't think she was living in reality. Dreadful though, it must have turned her mother's world upside down, to not only be nearly killed by her own daughter, but to find that her husband was dead and the daughter was on the run, had stolen all their money, and when she was caught was making these allegations against her husband, which she probably, I'm guessing, didn't know anything about. Violet never accused the mother of being complicit in this. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Can you believe it? It's already December. Nearly coming to the end of 2023. Wow, I don't know about you, but time is just flying by. I can't keep up with it. So the final video for this month will be probably on the 23rd or on Christmas Eve. You can let me know which day you would prefer, but I guess it doesn't really matter that much, does it? Because then you could watch it on Boxing Day, which is the day after Christmas for those non-religious people out there, on the 26th. And then I will convey my Christmas message to you all, to my dear loyal patrons. Well, I know this case has been covered by others, but I hope I was able to provide at least a little bit more information, and if I haven't, then at least you've had a laugh at my French pronunciations and my attempts at sounding French. I'm under no illusions. I know it's bad. It's so bad it might be good. One can only hope. And it's putting me in good stead. The pronunciation is getting better, I do believe, and in the eventuality that I retire to France, where I do hope you come and visit me at the village bar and buy me an absinthe, or I may even buy you one. So at least I won't sound so ridiculous in front of the locals. It is a dream. Odette and myself wish to have vintage mopeds, matching vintage mopeds, or an old Vespa or Lambretta with 2 seats on the back. I think the Lambretta has 2 seats on the back, doesn't it? The old, from the 1950s. Would love one of them. We'll have one eventually, I'm pretty sure, if I survive after my retirement. It happened to my friend 2 years ago. He just retired and he said to me, I'm looking forward to winding down a bit, Oddie. I've worked all my life and now I'll keep, he had his own business like I do. And he said, I'll keep the business, but I know I don't have to stress to find the money. I'm getting a pension now. I can relax a bit. 6 months later, drop dead. There you go. Pay taxes all your life. They like that, the government, when you drop dead after working all your life. I'm starting to ramble. I'm going to head off. I don't really have much more to say. I don't know. At the moment, I can't really think of anything else to say. But as usual, I might have an addendum if I can think of anything else connected to this case, or if I have a show and tell item of French origin and is interesting, who knows. But if I don't, then I will love you and leave you and see you towards Christmas. Take care, my friends. God bless and bye-bye. I told you I'd be back, didn't I? I'd actually saved this photo much earlier when I was researching this case, just because I love it. I wanted to share it with you. It's a little bric-a-brac shop in France. Fantastic. I would say probably 1930s, 1920s. Oh, how I would love to scour through this shop. I would be in my element, I can assure you. Nowadays they're getting hard to find, such shops, and the items are usually not that old, and if they are old, they want an absolute fortune for them. I just remember as a kid going to the antique auctions with my parents and to the flea markets. You could find some amazing stuff back then. I would love to hear about the flea markets around your area. I think I have asked this in previous years, but the ones around here are pretty much rubbish. It's like second-hand clothes and stuff that's not even old. It's just lost the feeling of being a flea market, but I'm sure I've heard in Paris they have a pretty good one there, but I can't get down there every weekend, can I? But look at that, isn't that fabulous? But I have found some items not at all connected with this case, but one is definitely French and one is French-Swiss, so nearly French, but I'll show you the French-Swiss one first. It is this Nestlé advertising banner, I would say from the late 1800s, probably 1890s is my estimate, judging by the girls' clothing. This is really rare. This would have hung in a shop window. It's a I have to try and remember this term. Photochromolithography. Photochromalithograph, that's it. It's a photochromalithograph. It's in sort of not the best condition, but it's very rare. And this, as I said, would have hung in the window. A lot of them were just thrown away afterwards, so that the fact that it survived is quite amazing. It doesn't belong in this frame. I just put it in that frame to protect it from any further damage. Many people have wanted to buy this off me. It's an item I have not let go of yet. I do intend to contact Nestlé about this one day. They're not my favourite company. A lot of negative stuff has come out about them, but I tend to put that aside when it comes to vintage advertising, just like Coke. I love vintage Coke stuff. Anyway, the next item before I go is this original watercolour graphic design by Jean Cocteau. I believe it is for a plate design. So yeah, that's an interesting piece. I've still got that. And you can see on the back somebody has stuck a article from a magazine about him. It's in French. I haven't even actually translated it. I don't know what it is. I do know there are some of you out there who like to see the items that I have. So there's a couple of them, and I'm definitely going now. Bye-bye, my friends. Tell me about your flea markets and your antique shops if you have any in your area. Would love to know.